Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being with us here today. This is the first time WTM Dublin and GDSCs have collaborated together for an event, and the first event of 2023 with both the groups. How many of you are here from these locations? Scotland? Oh, Norway? So, Spain? Okay, so most of the people are from Dublin, from the in-house. Okay, thank you so much for joining us for an evening of networking and talks. Before we move ahead, I want to introduce myself. I work as a community manager for mobile at MongoDB, and I'm a lead organizer for Women Tech Makers Dublin. Quite surprising, it's a Women Tech Makers and we are only 4 women. But yes, we are joined by our allies. So, and I'm also co-lead for GDG Dublin chapter and MongoDB user group. We started this group back in April last year, and I'm also lead organizer for that. And I'm a volunteer at Aspiring Women Speakers. I was very shy of the camera. If I'm on the stage here, it's all because of the communities. I'm passionate about that, so some of that is visible on the images. And I also like to give tech talks, and the most proud of that one is the DevOps UK, a member of Code First Girls, Women Who Code, and London Java community. So Women Tech Makers, you all are familiar with the program, but who is not familiar, it's a Google program to provide visibility, community, and resources for women in technology. So all your friends and colleagues in your group, if you know people, encourage them, invite them. And yeah, these are some of the stats, and you can find more information on the link that is mentioned there. And now I'll hand over to Stephanie to talk about Google Developer Student Clubs.
Thank you. Yay! Come on, people. Okay, so hi, my name is Stephanie. So I am a mentor of the Google Developer Students Club. I have brought with me some, well, a fellow mentor. We have Stelios here. A bit of applause for him. Yay! Woo! And then we brought with us our leads from different chapters from the different universities around in Scotland, Ireland, and the UK. A shout out to them, so yay! So a little bit about Google Developer Students Club, for those of you who are not familiar with this. So we are part of a community within Google where we have more than 1,500 colleges and universities who are part of this in around for more than 100 different countries. We have people from different parts in Scandinavia, we have parts we have communities in Brazil, in EMEA, and even Africa. So it's amazing to see that how this community is actually growing and getting bigger. So what this is all about is that the community is about connecting, a connection, learning, and growing. What we want is to bring a community, a whole, for the students to be able to be part of not only a community, but also a family, to be able to grow, to get opportunities from Google, to network with amazing different, well, not only communities, but different companies as well. And the idea is for the students to learn within tech, but not exclusively tech, but they can actually be from different parts. We have, for example, some students who are studying within the medical field. We have a literature student. We have all different kinds of students who are interested in being part of this. And what they do is just come together to this community, and one of the main things is that they want to be part of the big solution challenge. Some of you might have heard about this. It's this huge big hackathon that goes about like one time a year. It will start about soon, so for those of you who have heard about this, you might be a little bit interested in this. They come together as a group of around 4 students and try to solve one of the 16 GDSCs, SDGs, sorry, and just help the community and people around the entire world. And well, as I said, the communities within the GDSC, we have mentors, we have leads, and the leads, they have their own core team members from different chapters in the universities. And well, the last point here, that the GDSC is not only a community, it's also a network, but the whole of it is that we're all just a big family, and we're able to just get together, get to know each other, people from around in different countries, and just be part of something bigger than all of us. So here's the link that you can actually find the events and different chapters. So if you're interested in actually collaborating and getting some students to be part of maybe your idea, you just want to create something with them, we have so many amazing students who are really interested in participating. So you can just head over to the gdsc.community.dev and find the different chapters located in Dublin, for example, or in different parts. So yeah, that's it from the GDSC.
I'm also going to take this opportunity to talk about MongoDB user group. We started in April last year, and the same thing, groups and communities. How many of you feel that communities can help you get a job? How many do you think it's true statement? That is, I got my job through communities. Yes, so we can reach out the link, or you can scan the barcode to be part of that. And I was talking about this last event that was 2 weeks ago, an React Club, but yeah. These are some of the user groups that are there across the globe. And if you are around these locations anytime of the year, please feel free to get in touch with the leaders. And if you want to start a new one, you can start that as well. So some of the opportunities, like Stephanie mentioned about GDSCs, that goes with all the user group, I believe. So you can join the local group, or you can host an event in collaboration with your club in universities, or if you're working in your office. If you want to talk about how many of you are familiar about MongoDB or have used MongoDB. That's amazing. Would you like to share your experiences on a talk? No, please, yes. Yes, yes. That is how I started, to be honest. You know, I got scholarship from Google in collaboration with Audacity. That's how I was introduced to mobile development. I was a shy person. I mean, I don't know how I'm speaking. I would never go near the stage. So I gave my first talk because of getting involved in the community, in that scholarship with a group of people. It's a lot of energy and enthusiasm when you are working together. And then I said, oh, I like giving tech talks. So try that. This will open doors, a lot of doors for you. Network with people, join community events, talk to leaders. If you are looking for work, definitely this is the way you'll find work. I know some of this, there are students who reached out to me last time as well, that they're looking for internships and opportunities. Start finding communities near you, any community, any technology that you're interested in. So definitely will open a lot of doors for you. And yes, this is the link where you can find more about the user groups at MongoDB. And if you want to start one or want to speak, please do reach out. Some of the upcoming events we have on 21st Feb. We don't have people from Germany here. Or do we have anyone? Or if you are traveling there, so. Okay. International Women's Day, very close to my heart. We have had several teams since like ages. And I love that about Google, how they do that. We had progress, not perfection. Then we have courage to create. And now this time it's there to be. I mean, it's amazing, isn't it? If you want to find out more about these events, log into gdg.community.dev and search about IWD events. And definitely a lot of events are happening across the globe. And if you want to be part of one, encourage your female colleagues, your students in your network to be part of this and have the courage to talk about the technology they're interested in. So we'll start with the talks today with the first talk. Hosman, over to you.
Okay, so good night, everyone. My name is Hosman. And I want to start this talk about to know if you guys have some, I guess so, but I wanted to know if you guys have some developer experience. Have you worked into developing apps, even for your own projects? Okay, perfect. So my goal here is to try to walk through on how I use MongoDB and MongoDB Atlas to create an application for my own team. So let's talk a little bit about me. So I was born in Venezuela. I lived in Spain, and now I am here in Dublin. I've been with MongoDB for more than 2 years. Sorry, I was muting my laptop. I work in the technical services department. So this is a post-sale role. So once we find a customer that wants to work with us, that's pre-sales, then we as a TS, as a technical team, we try to help them accomplish what they are trying to do with MongoDB. It could be either a project or a problem within their application. So we are like consultants trying to help them, solve their issues. Well, one of my hobbies is, talk music. I have a cat named Kenya. Well, that's one of the hobbies that I have. And the agenda for today, I'm going to talk about what is MongoDB Atlas. So for the ones of you that don't know, what is app services, and then how I use those two tools to create an application. And I will walk through a little bit, fast, but hopefully for you get the idea of how to create an application. And then we are going to do a workshop. You're going to see the app and you're going to play with it. The application is a 3D application, so it's a game. And I created this because I wanted to show in my team how you can actually, because we work with so many different areas. We have the MongoDB itself area. We have a tool that you can install on-premise on your own servers. So we support that. We have the ROM TSC, that's where I belong, that we support mobile application that work with MongoDB. So one of the things that I wanted to show to my coworkers is how they can use MongoDB to create an application. So on one side, we have MongoDB Atlas. MongoDB Atlas is a database as a service you can think of. So you have a database you can deploy on the cloud. The database has different, we create something for you, for developers. They are scalable. You can scale horizontally or vertical depending on your needs. The database are, in this case, we have tiers and 0 tiers to try that out for free, or you can, scale upon your needs. And one of the things that I enjoy, and I think this is maybe what is not being told enough, is that we have also the app services. And app services is a backend as a service. So the goal here is actually to create your own application fully on MongoDB. So you don't need to maintain your own infrastructure. You don't need to deploy your own things in your server and maintain those. We can do that for you. And you can use different SDKs to actually create your application. If you use iOS, Swift, JavaScript, doesn't matter. We have support for all of the SDKs out there, the major SDKs. And you can use all the functions built in Atlas, like functions, triggers, webhooks, GraphQL, all these kind of tools to create a fully functional application. And this is what we're going to do today. I'm going to show you the 3D app that is fully deployed on Atlas in an M0 tier. So I'm not paying anything, even though I am a MongoDB employee, and it's fully functional. Okay, so to create this application, I wanted to use every part that I have available in MongoDB to show my coworkers how they can actually solve our customer issues when they have something like this. So we are going to use authentication because the 3B application is going to be authenticated. You're going to use the username and password to access the app so that I can track your progress. You can log in your iOS and then log in your laptop, and you want to see all the games you played, what's your ranking, people that you play with, all this kind of information. So that's why we need authentication. We're going to read categories and questions because this is a trivia application. I'm going to show you how you can do this. We're going to save games. That's another important thing that we need to do in this trivia. And last but not least, we're going to display the ranking. And that's the kind of the gamification option that the trivia application has. So for creating this, we are using the React SDK. So we are creating an application that is on a laptop. It's a web application. It uses GraphQL to connect to my backend, to the app services backend. And I'm using the web SDK to do all these kind of operations like authenticate, like call up background functions, to save the games, all these kind of things. I'm able to do this because I have an SDK that's built in, ready for using with JavaScript. So authentication. If you log into your app, into the cloud, into Atlas App Services, you will see that we prepare for you out of the box several authentication providers. Those are anonymously, if you want to have like a freemium app. So users can access the app without no registration. And then if you later wants to register, you can link those and then the user will be registered. You have email and password. That's the easy one. That's the one that I have in this app. But you have Facebook, Google, custom JWT authentication. This will allow you to basically connect with any third-party authentication provider, even if we don't have it ready, but you can use it. So the way we are doing this is something that you can do in the application. Is every time a user register, we want to have a trigger. That's a thing that is running on the cloud, listening to events. So in this case, we have an authentication trigger that would run every time a user is created. And once the user is created, we are going to create two collections in MongoDB, right? And I know that most of you has worked with MongoDB, so you're aware of what a collection is and what a document is. So in this case, we're creating two documents, one for the user collection, because they want to track the username, email, how many games this user has played, and also another document in the ranking collection. And this is because for ranking purposes, we're going to use several metrics, like the total time I've played the game, how many games, what's my win ratio. Those things are going to be calculated in the cloud. And this is the way we're doing it. So the workflow is, and you will see because we're going to play it, you see that when you enter your email, well, this is a email by username. So your username and password, it will register and it will return a user. And in the background, the application is doing this trigger that's listening all the time to new users. And when a new user is created, it's going to create those collections for those documents for us. And that's how we solve the authentication part. So now we are authenticated. So now what we need is to read categories. I don't know if you played trivia in the past, but you know that you have categories to choose. And then once you select one category, you have questions to answer. So that's the way we're creating this. So every time you enter the app, it displays a certain number of categories. And the way we're doing this is we are using GraphQL in the React SDK to query our backend and return how many categories we have available. And this is pretty nice because the way we're doing this, if tomorrow we want to add a new category, we only add it in the collection. We added a new document in the collection, and all of the apps are going to be ready for that. We don't need to, create a new deployment, deploy the app. There's users using the latest version with 5 categories and users using a previous version with 3. This will not happen because it will get updated automatically because that's a call that we are doing on the backend. Once you have all the categories here, the user selects one and we're going to display the questions. And it's similar to the categories field. So here on the left, I put 2 examples of 2 MongoDB documents. The first one is a document example of the categories part. So we have like the questions, we have the languages available, well, in this case only English, but we have the title of the category, right? So when the user choose one, we are going to query all the questions that are within this particular category here. So that's the way we are going to retrieve. And this happens to be the same. If tomorrow we add more questions, if tomorrow we fix a typo, if tomorrow, we make some changes, we don't need to deploy anything. This is going to be updated immediately because it's a cloud backend call. So now, okay, we solve 2 out of the 4 things that we are working today, the authentication and the queries. So the next thing that we need to do is to save user games. We can use, if you have experience on GraphQL, we can use a mutation, right, to store something. But in this case, using what we call call to function. That's a functionality that we provide and in which you can call a background function. And the goal of this, or the main scenario of this, is to actually be able to run complex code on the cloud using the cloud architecture instead of your client architecture. So what we are going to do here is that every time a user finishes a game, I will use the SDK to access a function that's called add new game. And I'm sending the new game to the cloud, and I return a success or a failure, and I will, react to that. But that's the way I'm doing it. So actually, I'm using another thing that we provide that's called call to functions. So you can run functions on the cloud. One example that I like to tell about with this is that imagine that you have an application that stores images, right? So instead of taking a photo and then uploading that photo that can be huge and will have, a lot of storage, you're going to pay for that storage. One thing you can do is to actually, every time a user uploads a photo, I'm going to have a trigger that's listening, and then I will send that photo to S3 and get a link, and will only update the link on my document. And then I will send that link out to all my client devices. And when I'm within a device and I click that photo, I will open the link of S3. So that's an easy use case, an interesting use case for triggers and functions on the cloud. So for showing the ranking, I'm using a GraphQL query again, but the difference here is that instead of being a simple query, I'm using a custom resolver. So this is a fancy name, but basically what I'm doing is I'm using a function to retrieve some data using GraphQL. And the nice part of this, the powerful actually part of this, is that I can use MongoDB aggregations to create really complex query on my cloud database and just retrieve the result. So if you have used MongoDB in the past and you know what the aggregation framework is, you can query data from different collections. You can format that query. You can create new fields using fields on that query. You can sort that out. You have different stages that you will pass your query within all those stages, and then you're going to return results. This, using the normal query language, is going to be hard, but if you can, we have MongoDB on the background on the database. So we're going to use this aggregation to create a complex. Well, in this case, it's not complex, it's just getting the results, right? But imagine that you have a more complex query. You can use that in your cloud and then just retrieve the results to your application. Doesn't matter if an iOS, Android, whatever. In this case, is a laptop, it's a web application, so it doesn't matter. The way we display the ranking in the app is like this. It's just a list of leaderboard. And here we use the win ratio. That's the first metric that we are going to see. So that's win games versus lost games. If there's a tie, 2 people are tied in this win ratio, we're going to use the total time. So the person that has less time is going to show the first. And if there is a tie on that as well, we're going to use the total game. So those are the 3 metrics that we're going to use to show the leaderboard. And lastly, I added a new functionality. This was, in fact, 1 month ago. I was thinking of how I can, leverage the app, because when I use the app, it's like today, like we have a crowd of people that work as MongoDB. I show the app, so it's like, well, it's okay to play, it's fun. But also, what happens if we have a chat and we can chat together? So the way I created the chat was using 2 different scenarios. On one side, we have the read. This is what we use to read the conversations. It's basically by pulling GraphQL. So we're only every second we're querying actually if there's new messages, and if there's new messages, we display those messages. And if you want to send a message, we use a GraphQL mutation for that. So we'll send in an object, that's a message object using GraphQL. We're storing that in the background, and then when we query it, we receive it. And it has a nice thing because we can receive the different conversation for everybody. So the person that is logging, it's like WhatsApp or Messenger. It will show on the right, that's your conversation, and all the other people will show on the left. That's the way it's done. But the nice part, I think, it's to see it in action. So here is a QR code that you can scan, because one of the nice things of creating an application using the web is that if you're doing it more or less offline first, the app will adapt to the screen. So when you enter the application, you will see that on the top, it will show you the username. You can create whatever username you want. I think it's to be like 5 characters long. That's the only prerequisites. And then the password, you can, again, select whatever you want. And then it should open this. Okay, so here we can see that we get 4 categories, and we know now we know how we are getting these categories. And then you can play one of it. So let's try to play one together. And then you can play if you want on your mobile phone. So the Space Needle is located in which city? Oh, yeah, that's right. So there are 86,400 seconds in a day. Is true or false? True. Okay, that's true. Next, what year is on the flag of the U.S. state Wisconsin? $1848? Okay, don't Google it. What is the German word for a spoon? Any German speaker? The last one. Rhode Island is actually located in the US mainland, despite its name. That's true or false? What state is the largest state of the United States of America? What city has the busiest airport in the world? Atlanta? Tokyo? Whoa. What do the letters of the fast food chain KFC stands for? Yeah, that's the easy one. The South Asian island of Borneo is politically divided among 3 countries. That's true or false? Sounds true, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which sign of the zodiac comes between Virgo and Scorpio? Libra. You think so? I'm Libra, and I don't think that's Scorpio, but I don't know. Maybe yes. Libra. Yeah. Okay. Boy, look at this. Huh? No. But you see, thanks to you guys, I might be, no, I'm not the one, I'm the second, you see. There's a person that ends the game faster, yeah? And this is a good, you see, we both have the same win ratio, right? But in this case, Guillermo has less time than me, so he's showing at first. Looks. Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, everyone. Awesome. Okay. So thank you, Hosman. That was a great talk. And I think you always clear my doubts about Rel. So thank you so much. Awesome. Okay. So I'm just going to adjust my screen a little bit and then quickly start up. All right. Okay. So I am Harshit. Hi, I'm a senior community manager at MongoDB. And the title of my talk today is From Scripting Glue to Next Level App. Let me decrypt this title a little. So basically, it's from Google Apps scripts or Google Sheets. I'm like glued to Google Apps, Google Sheets and Google Apps scripts to a next level app in 3 days. And this was a part of an internal hackathon we did at MongoDB. So we had to choose a tech, and I'll share the story in a bit. But anyhow, a bit about me. I'm Harshit, based in Dublin, and I was previously in Singapore. 9 years in developer communities. I run a butter chicken squads. If you are interested in having butter chicken, drop me a note. We'll go out, have some good butter chicken, and we can talk about butter chicken all day. No tech, all butter chicken. That's important. Ask me about this gift story when we meet after the talks. And don't miss the janitor's expression that are really important, actually. Those are better than what I'm doing over there. Anyways, okay. So about me, I'm Harshit. As I said, I work as a senior community manager in developer relations team at MongoDB. My job is to organize MongoDB user groups around the world. And these are my Twitter handles. This is the address, and there's my date of birth. I'm quite old. I should have added a fake one over there. Anyways, all right, okay. So yeah, that is UDC. Yes, should have, yeah. All right, okay. So I work at MongoDB. So a bit about MongoDB. I think Husman explained a lot about it, but I'll just quickly cover. So MongoDB is a document store. I think most of you know about MongoDB. We store data in documents rather than in a tabular format. We store it in document format, and it allows various type of fields. You have, of course, in a JSON type format, you have fields, you have arrays. Sorry, I should say data types. Nested objects, you have geodata and data in ISO standard as well, date in ISO standard as well. So that's MongoDB. Okay, back to the story. So this talk is about my experience that I had during a hackathon, internal hackathon. So I, as I said, I manage MongoDB user groups around the world. So you all know that you all do communities and events. We do these events all around the world. We have groups at various locations. And the idea is that I'm more of a program manager from the last few years. I'm managing programs. It's like a user group is a program. Similarly, Stephanie or Henna right here. So when we manage programs, we tend to move from using more tech things to using more sheets, and you get into these kind of things, and it's quite quick. And over the last few years, I've actually become a sheets nerd. So, my team calls me that you're a sheet nerd. You actually go back and you have so many formulas. I use app scripts a lot. I have actually created websites over Sheets as a database in the past. So it's quite quick, it's quite quick. I work at MongoDB now, so I'm not going to talk about apps, Google Sheets as a database, but it's not scalable. It's not cool. All right. Sorry. So all my data around where these groups are, where are they, who these leaders are, for example, GDSC leads over here, where they are, what are they doing, how are they, doing it as a part of their job, stays in a sheet, and it's a big sheet, it's a massive sheet with so much of data. Of course, it's not scalable. Once it starts getting bigger, it takes time to load and it gets stuck. So a few of our teammates reached out and said, Harshit, what are you doing? You're working in a database company. You ought to use a database now. Okay, cool. So we decided that it has to be MongoDB, of course, because you work at MongoDB. And we know MongoDB is scalable. The data ingestion is quite easy. The schema modeling is quite easy. It's not like a relational database. You have to plan tables and normalization. So let's do that. All right. Exactly. No, yeah, MongoDB makes it so much easier. I'll explain that. All right. Okay. So this was, I'll not lie, this was a 5-day hackathon. But as everybody does it, right? We just relaxed the first 2 days thinking, what are we going to do? We started on the day 3rd. So this should be day 3rd. I didn't talk about the other days. It's a talk, right? Cannot cover that. But the idea was, okay, so data is in sheet. We ought to design a schema first, ingest the data into the database, and then think about how we can, view it or put the data back into database, so worry about front end and back end afterwards. All right. So with MongoDB, the schema design is so easy. You don't have to worry about normalization, tabular format. You don't have to primary keys, and you don't have to worry about all that. The simple rule for MongoDB schema designing is data that is accessed together should be stored together. So For example, if I talk about this, if you are working on a customer database, you would have different tables which are like customer details, address, summary, different tables for each of these data. And then you would have an object relational mapping layer that would actually help you write all those big SQL queries, joins, and everything to actually pull data the way you want. Or you create APIs or microservices on these tables. However, with MongoDB, you actually store the data in a very similar format. You want to access it. So I would actually have a table for a customer, a table for an opportunity, a table for a, oh, sorry, I should call it collection. We call it collection. A collection of documents is, a collection of document is a collection at MongoDB. So I would actually store it like this. So it's quite easy. So while the data was in sheet, it was quite easy for me. I could, go back, export a CSV. We know how to do that, right? Go back, export a CSV for each of my sheet, and went to my Compass. So Compass is MongoDB Compass is a desktop tool that allows you to access your data. You can run some queries and do some analysis and see what the load is. I went in there, I used the add data button, imported a CSV, and within a few minutes, we had our database ready. We had a database for, we had a table, we had a collection for events. We had a collection for all the groups, all the user groups around the world. We had a collection for all the organizers and readers around the world. So within a few minutes, if I had to do this via, an RDBMS method, it would have taken some kind of time for me to, plan how should I store address like this? Should I store, do some normalization, make it more, spend some time on, data modeling. But MongoDB makes it so easy. So this part was done. So back to the story. Day one, in the first hour or the first few minutes, I would say, we were able to ingest the data. The database was set. Now, the next question was, what about the front end and back end? Now, there are so many options. I know all of us go through this a lot. When you are trying to build something, you always think of, what should I start with? Is it Vue.js? Is it React? Should I do Angular? Should I do, go back to Java Spring Boot, or so many things? So that dilemma stood with us. What should we do? How should we proceed with this? and the good part is, MongoDB actually works with all of these frameworks. There's a very good integration available, and MongoDB works really well with all of these frameworks. So there's not really a good deciding factor as well. Oh, this is going to be a good way to go with. So we had all the options available, and we had a similar situation. And we tried a few things as well. We tried building some POCs. Okay, let me see how can I quickly plug in my database into a Vue.js app, and do some noodling, do some POC, get some data onto the app, get some data into the front end. It was quite tricky. We got stuck in a few places. However, and JavaScript, of course, sometimes throws in so many random errors that if you're not really actively coding, you will be like, oh my God, Stack Overflow will confuse you, and you'll end up, doing a Peter kind of a thing here. However, on day 2, early morning, we found out that the Next.js and MongoDB integration works like a charm. It is a relationship made in the heaven, and I'll just show in the next few slides how it works out, and it's so good. But this was a good revelation. We kind of found out it's quite easy. We don't have to go a long way of building microservices around our database and then call the APIs to fetch the data. It's, there is a way you can quickly fetch your data on a Next.js app quite easily. So I'll detail about that. How many of you know about Next.js? Okay, a few. How many of you know about React? Okay, great. So Next.js is actually built over React. So so React actually has a thing called client-side rendering. That is good in some ways because you can load a page right away, while for example, your Facebook is majorly built with React. You can actually, all the components of your post, the Facebook post, are rendered immediately, and then the data comes in later on, right? So this is basically how React works. It's a client-side rendering framework. Next.js is very similar to React. It's built over React, but the major the major plus point is it allows server-side rendering. So basically, whenever you fetch something, the page is already rendered on the server side, and then it comes to your front end. The biggest benefit with Next.js is it helps with SEO, and that was the biggest drawback of React.js. So for the SEO, search engine optimization purposes, you want the data to be read by all the web crawlers, but with React that was not possible. So Next.js was built. Of course, there are more things on which are better with Next.js, like file static routing, and we'll talk about that. But these are this is the most important factor that Next.js came up. Yeah. So where to start? Okay. So Next.js provides a very simple example app with MongoDB. So I just went to the terminal, did npx create add next app with example with MongoDB. And the moment I did that, I had a full-fledged app ready with the directory structure. There were components, pages, public files, the HTML files. There was a util folder that had a MongoDB JS file, because I launched. I actually started my app with an example with MongoDB. So they created an example mongodb.js file for me, which actually helps me connect to a MongoDB database. So I haven't done any code as of now. Quite easy. I loaded the data into MongoDB, created an app, and in the environment local variables, I added my database connection strings. So you can find that in your cloud database. If MongoDB Atlas is our cloud database, as Postman mentioned, you can find your connection string to the database, and you can plug it in your environment file. And the moment I ran it, I had a page that said your front end is working. You already have you're connected to MongoDB. Looks quite good, quite amazing. I think this is what we wanted, right? We wanted a front end app that is connected to MongoDB. And now the next step is we need to fetch the data into it. So I haven't done a lot of coding yet. This is day 2. We have spent a lot of time thinking. It's actually 2 more days thinking in the beginning as well. But we have this real quick. All right. After some HTML and CSS and trying to calm our brains down with doing that, we kind of converted that page into that. It's going to be this look like this is how it's going to look like. We'll call it MongoDB user group logging app, and we'll have these things at the app in the app. We will have a a page to view all the events. We'll have a page to view all the groups. We'll have a page to view all the leaders. And we will have a page to insert some of the data into the database. So, all right. So we did this pretty relaxed. Now was the time to start fetching this data. So there are several ways you can do that. Of course, you can build an endpoint in MongoDB Atlas. There's a way to build endpoint. You can call that endpoint, fetch the data, and then render it on the page. But the easiest way that Next.js provides you is a get server side props function. So with the get server side props function, I could quickly connect to the database, and with this particular code, I could actually call my database, query it. This is called MQL. This is very MQL style. MQL is MongoDB query language, similar to what you've heard SQL. It's quite easy and quite simple. I could query my database, do some sorting functions, convert it to an array, and then send it to a prop. So props, right? Most of you know React. So props are properties that you can send across components, and okay. So quite easy. I had the data. We put the data onto the page. It looked very bad, of course, because there is no UI yet, but we were able to fetch the data. So task done. So the data is in database now. We are able to fetch the data. I have only written, I think, almost like 10 lines of code by now. So I'm able to fetch the data. It's all working. Now we need to, of course, make the data good. So day 3 came up. The idea was we'll do some beautification, and we'll work on data ingestion. So for beautification, it's a task, of course. I mean, how many of you are actually front-end engineers here? So easy for you. So easy for you. For us, it's really hard. Okay. So it's really hard for us, beautification. However, thanks to Google, there is a material UI. How many of you heard of material UI? Awesome. So there's a material UI or bootstraps or these frameworks. They are really helpful. They are pretty good. And several blogs around the internet actually pointed out that Next.js and material UI work like a charm. So okay, let's pick that up. So material UI came to our rescue. Sorry for the animation. So So we plugged in Material UI. We picked up some style table cell, and tried plugging that into the app, and displaying the data in that manner. And eventually we had a quite a nice looking page. Of course, it's not as amazing, but this is what we could turn up in like some quick hours of putting Material UI into our app. One small thing I missed though was there's a really good part of Next.js that it provides file system routing, actually file static routing. So Next.js actually create, there's a pages folder, and all the JS files you create inside it is actually going to be a page in your app. So whenever I create a new JS file, I could create a /events page, a /form page, a /groups page. So that's another benefit of Next.js. So we did this. We got a pretty nice looking UI, looked good, looked amazing. We did that for all our pages, and everything was rendering in a good table, in a tabular format. One thing though, we wasted like a lot of time, or not wasted, invested a lot of time in implementing pagination. Paginations are always a always a tricky space. So yeah, day 3.5. This is our last day of the hackathon. We had to build in data ingestion as well. So Next.js also provided us with we created a form. Again, Material UI came to the rescue, and in the pages and API folder, we actually created a post method to actually post data back to MongoDB. Again, quite simple. We created a a database connection, and we just did a MQL query, which was insert data. So all the data that was in the form, I was with this one line was able to send back to database. Okay. So other thing is MongoDB, as Hosman mentioned, provides several app services. So there's an app, there is a MongoDB charts as well. So you can quickly build charts. Of course, I went back to my team when they asked me to move from Google Sheets. I would have said that, right? I can draw charts in a click, right? Insert chart, change some parameters, right? You can do that with Sheets. So my team said, no, MongoDB has charts. So you can build charts real quick. It's quite a one-click thing. You select your data source, you select what type of charts, you can build those charts. So we were able to quickly plot a dashboard as well around how we are doing with the groups around the world and these things. All right, I do have the app as well. So let me, yeah. So that's the app, still works. And I can go into insert data. I have a form, I can submit, and the data will go back to the database. Okay, so cool. This is the end of my talk. But however, we were able to build something out of it. Lessons learned. Of course, not to be lazy, because we wasted 2 days. So you should start early. Don't be us. Data modeling is easy with MongoDB. It's quite easy. We were able to take the data down from a CSV and put it into the MongoDB right away. Imported a CSV all set. And of course, modeling is easy because you put the data the way you want it to be, the way you want to fetch it eventually. So Next.js MongoDB integration works like a charm. HITI here stands for heard it, tried it, and loved it. That's just, I'm trying to be good with slangs. You saw I'm old, right? So I'm learning these millennial slangs. And UI is hard, of course, not for the front end ones, but but yeah, hard for me any day. So thanks to Material UI, that it really helps to make your app better. The last learning is be lazy. Things do work out anyhow. So the first one doesn't matter actually. In the end, things work out. You are able to get things going to working, and they happen. All right, a few resources to look out for. These are all available in our developer hub. So developer.mongodb.com. They're all available there. But these are the very good ones that really helped me in general to me and my team to figure out that Next.js will really help. This article has 3 methods. For example, the one I shared was get static, get server side props. There are 2 more mentioned in this article, so you can read about that. Sometimes it's really not good to like fetch everything on a server request. So that's probably not the best one, but that's an easy one to quickly fetch. All right, there are some community resources as well. We have a MongoDB developer community, that is community.mongodb.com. You can join. There are forums. There's a forum. You can ask questions. It's our Stack Overflow version of our own Stack Overflow. We, have questions. You can earn reputation and answer questions. And as I said, we have a developer hub, developer center, which is developer.mongodb.com, where you can find all the articles I shared. There's a MongoDB University. There are free courses. They are free. They are globally accessible. You can do them on your own pace. And there are curriculum for different roles as well. So you can choose a learning path as well if you want, like a DBA path or a developer path. And we are hiring, of course. So it's careers.mongodb.com. You can reach out to me for referrals because I get some money for that, of course. So, or any one of us, we would love to refer you. Please do reach out. And yeah, all my social links are available in that page. The last one, I'll just repeat, we have a MongoDB user group. So keep attending and keep joining us. I think Hannah already pointed out. I hope you all joined it. And thank you for your time. Yeah.
Can you hear me? Yeah, cool. Okay, thank you for joining. That's the first thing. Today I'm going to be talking about a thing that I'm calling the infinite loop. This is the first time I talk about it. I've been posting online about it, but I have never done a talk about it. It's basically a new development methodology, and I'm going to explain how it works. So the first thing I want to do is I want to apologize because this talk is very long. So I'm going to speed up a lot through the first half. And then the second half, I'm going to slow down a little bit because it's the most interesting part, okay? About me, I am Remo Jansen. That's my Twitter. You can follow me. I'm not going to spend too much time because I have to rush, but I will share these slides. Okay, I will share these slides later so you can check all the links and everything. But basically, I started my own company in 2018, and I'm involved doing consulting for mostly startups. And I help them basically to come up with processes and ways to be more efficient and deliver faster and deliver with less risk and stuff like that. That's basically my main thing. But in the past, I've been really involved with the community. So I was running the open source meetup here in Dublin. I was running the TypeScript meetup here in Dublin. And I also ran the JavaScript conference that is called JS Day. The first one happened in 2019, and the next one is happening this year in September. So what I mostly want to talk today is about the software industry is very inefficient and very ineffective, okay? And I have some evidence about this. But before, I want to make sure that we understand what we're talking about. So when I say that we are ineffective, is that basically we're doing the wrong thing. And when I say that we are inefficient, is that we're doing the wrong thing wrong. So what that means is that a lot of times we spend time doing things that are totally pointless. Like we're building a product that nobody wants, for example. And other times we're building a product that people want, but we're doing it in a very inefficient way. We're very slow, making a lot of mistakes along the way. So this is mainstream all over the industry. And there's some evidence about it. So the biggest study in the world about this is called the Chaos Report, and it's been running for 30 years. And it's kind of hard to see here because it's small, but these are the years. So it started in 1994, and it's been running until 2020. The green is success, yellow is kind of no success, not failure, and red is failure. So when it was a failure, basically the project was totally canceled, or the company went bankrupt or something very bad like that. When it was yellow, what happened is the project was late, or the project cost more than they expected, or the project was finished, but maybe the customers didn't like it or something like that, you know? Success is when it was done on time, generated revenue, everything was perfect. So in the last 30 years, the best that we have done is only 38%, okay? So the whole industry as a whole is failing around 70% of the time, okay? It's only succeeding only 38%. And if that's not bad news, I have more bad news. The bad news is that actually in the last 10 years, we're actually getting worse. So it looks like we improve a little bit, but then we started to get worse, okay? It's very hard to explain why this happened. I think it's probably because we went from waterfall to agile and we improved a little bit, but then we have kind of reached the peak of that improvement. And then in 2018, there was another study, and it was from Stripe this time. And Stripe estimate that we lost 300 billion on global GDP every single year because how inefficient developers are, okay? So obviously there's a lot of room for improvement, and I am obsessed with this topic, okay? So I spent a lot of time trying to fix this, and it's kind of like what I believe is my goal in my business, okay? So another thing that I'm really sad to see is that I work with many companies, and in some companies like MongoDB, I'm sure people is happy, but in the industry in general, there's a lot of frustration, okay? So there's a lot of people that is feeling unproductive. They fail to see the impact of their work. They are tired of repetitive tasks. They have deadlines that are completely unrealistic. This is really common in the industry. And then in the business side, there's also a lot of frustration because they struggle to gain customers. They struggle to retain customers. The developers are quitting because they are frustrated. They have really severe problems hiring. So there is a lot of problems both for developers and for organizations. So how did we get to this situation? Like why is so bad? Okay, I'm going to try to answer this, but the first thing that we need to think is problems come from unknowns. So in this quote, what we're saying is that all forms of risk come from something that we don't know. We don't know maybe how to do something. We don't know what we're trying to build. This rule is in finance. Warren Buffett is from finance. He says that all risk comes from not knowing what we're doing, but the same is valid for software, okay? We have something to remove the unknowns, okay? What we have to remove the unknowns is basically the software methodologies. And I'm going to go now through the history of software methodologies. I have like self-explanatory icons. So when you see a heart, is the good things. When you see the poo, is the bad things. Okay. So waterfall was the first one, and it's called waterfall because what happens is you need to imagine that those blocks are water containers. So you drop water in the first one, the requirements, and it starts filling. When the water gets to the very top, then it starts overflowing and the water falls into design. Okay. So the message there is that you cannot start design until the requirements are complete. So in waterfall, the problem is that you have to do everything up front. So you have to do the requirements of the entire application, the design of the entire application, the implementation of the entire application. And then at the very end is when the customer see it. And in a lot of cases, what the customer got is not what they wanted. So you wait for a very long time, and the feedback was very late. So that's when I say that it's infrequent and deferred testing. When I use the word testing, a lot of times it's going to be not testing as testing the code, but testing as testing the code, but also testing that the users like it or the users want it, you know? A lot of times there was delays, so there was a scope creep at the end. And the only good thing that I can say about waterfall is that it is better than total chaos, okay? You maybe have to think some things up front. So maybe the architecture is going to be a little bit more clean, but it's not really helping to remove the unknowns because you're doing a lot of work without knowing really what the customers want and if it's going to work or if it's not going to work. So you're waiting too long to test. Then we have a Scrum. A Scrum comes from the Agile world, okay? And the best thing about Scrum is that it was very well documented. So the Scrum has a lot of documentation, books. You can actually go and do a course in Scrum, get a certificate. So that made Scrum very easy for companies to adopt, because with other methodologies, there was no book to follow or anything like that. So it was much more difficult. The whole idea about Scrum is that you do sprints. Sprints are like 2 weeks or maybe a month. And you basically do the same thing that you do in Waterfall. You do planning, you do development, you do testing, but you are reducing the risk because instead of doing that during 2 or 3 years, you're doing that every 2 weeks, okay? The problem is that a lot of times in businesses, people get obsessed with this has to be done in 2 weeks. And that becomes kind of like the obsession of the company, okay? And every morning you're supposed to have this meeting that's called the standard meeting. And the standard meeting is supposed to be a meeting where you see if there's any things blocking the team and you resolve the thing blocking the team. But that is what it's supposed to do. That's what the Scrum book says. But what the managers do is not that. What the managers do is ask you, is it ready yet? And every single morning they ask you, is it ready yet? When is it going to be ready? So the problem of a Scrum, in my opinion, is that because you have these 2 weeks deadlines all the time, people get really focused on delivering, okay? Finishing the task as soon as possible. And there is more planning than discovery. What I mean by that is discovery is when there's something that you don't know and you run an experiment to see if you're right or wrong, okay? And in software, that's the thing. A lot of times we don't know what we're doing. A lot of times you can ask me, say, how long is it going to take? And my answer is going to be like, I don't know. I think it's going to be between 3 days and 5 days. But the reality is that I don't know, you know? So the only way I can maybe give you a more specific answer is if I try to do maybe a prototype, even if it's not fully tested, not ready to go live, but then I know because I have a much better idea. So I do a little bit of discovery. But in Scrum, people prefer planning than discovery. And also we track things like the burn down chart. The burn down chart is like a graph that tells you how many tasks are left to be complete in the next 2 weeks. And the managers focus a lot on that. So everybody's focused on the dates. And as a result of that, the quality basically takes a price. So what happens is everybody's focused on finishing the task and the technical depth grows because you're rushing basically. You have to rush, you have no option, okay? We have also the Agile Manifesto. The Agile Manifesto are 4 principles that are basically saying that we should plan less and collaborate more with customers and respond to changes. And all these principles are really good and they are very valid, but there's one big problem with them. The good thing is that the Agile Manifesto was done by 17 really famous software engineers. So when those 17 engineers say this, all of a sudden everybody say, okay, maybe it's time to abandon Waterfall, okay? Because they listen to these leaders, okay? So this thing started the transition from Waterfall to Scrum and other methodologies. The bad thing is that it's too open. Like it doesn't tell me how I should run my teams or my company. It's just 4 rules, and I'm supposed to find everything on my own. This is not specific enough, okay? Then we have Lean UX in 2008, and Lean UX is the first time that people start to realize that the most important thing is to actually find what the customer wants, okay? So Lean basically was really customer focused. The idea was to build only what you have to build, like the idea of minimum viable product came from this. So you build the smallest product that you can, put it in the hands of the customer, and then you ask the customer if they like it or not, or you keep an eye and see if they're using it or not. So we're doing that using data. So we use data-driven approach. It's not like opinion approach, because a lot of times what happens as well is one manager in the company comes and say, I have an idea for a feature. And because it's an idea from the manager, becomes the highest priority, okay? But you don't know if the users want this feature, you know? So you actually should make these choices based on user feedback. You shouldn't make them based on your ideas or your feelings, you know? It should all based on data. The other thing that prioritize taking action over planning. So here is much more interesting to say, I'm going to put a feature out there and see what happens. Not so much planning. I don't care about the planning. What I care is I want feedback. That's my main priority. So this is the first methodology that mitigates the risk of building the wrong product. That's the best thing. The bad thing is that it sometimes requires a lot of upfront investment, because when you do the feedback as early as possible, basically companies that adopt this, what happens is they have to invest in a UX team. Before this, they have developers, they didn't have UX teams. But now they have UX teams because what they want to do is they want to build wireframes and things like that to ask the customer as early as possible, even before we build anything, okay? So the problem of that is that you need to hire a whole team, so it's more expensive than running an organization with just developers. The next one is Kanban. And in Kanban, basically, you have, instead of having sprints, what you have is you have a list of tasks, and the tasks have stages, right? So have planning, implementation, testing, deploying, release, whatever. So the whole point of Kanban is that you don't focus on saying this is going to be done in 2 weeks. What you focus on is on the jumps between a stage and a stage, and thinking, how can I make the transition as efficient as possible? So, for example, when something goes from development to test, what steps are we following there? Is there any way we can optimize that? Okay. It's less structured than Scrum, so there is less rules. And this is one of the reasons why companies use more Scrum than Canvas. It's because if I go to a business and I say, you should try Kanban, the first problem they have is like, well, how? Like we cannot get a certificate in Kanban. We cannot, you know, the problem is it's much more difficult to learn because there's less documentation, there's less training courses out there, all that kind of stuff, okay? But there's also a problem with Kanban is that it doesn't really solve the Scrum problem, because the charts that they use to track your performance are also really focused on how many tasks did you get done. So for example, they will take a look at a chart, and the chart will say, you got 20 tasks done, you got 10 tasks done, okay? And now you're my favorite, okay? But that is a problem, because maybe your 20 features, nobody used them, okay? And your 10 features gave me $1 million, okay? So I don't care how many features do you do. What I really care is, are they actually valuable features? Are they actually used? So by focusing on outputs, we are forgetting about the outcomes. And that's one of the mistakes of Kanban again. Then in 2011, the authors of the Agile Manifesto, they celebrated the 10th anniversary, and they joined together, and the 4 principles became 12. And you can see that, for example, one of them is satisfy the customer. And I think what happened is they kind of took a look at what was going out there, and they say, okay, Lean UX seems to help a lot. So they incorporated everything from Lean UX, but they also started to incorporate some ideas here that at the time they didn't have a name, but some of the ideas here a couple of years later became DevOps, okay? So the problem again, so the good thing about this is that it took all the lessons from Waterfall to 2011 and put them together in 12 principles. The bad thing is that it's still too open for interpretation. If I give a company these 12 principles and I say, okay, now you have the secret to success, they're going to be like, no, I don't know how to use these 12 principles, okay? The next one is DevOps. So DevOps focus on, there's this thing called the 3 ways of DevOps. If you see those charts there, the first way of DevOps is called flow thinking. And the whole point is that you have development, that's when you're creating something, and then you have operations, that is supposed to be when it's live and when the customers are using it, okay? So you're supposed to move things from development to operations as soon as you can, as fast as you can. So the first flow thinking thing is it recommends to do things to move as fast as you can. One of the things that you can do is make sure that the teams are one team. Because what used to happen before is the development finish something and then they give it to the operation guys. And the operation guys, they were like enemies, you know? It was like, no, I don't trust you because if this crash in production, they are going to call me in the middle of the night and I don't trust your code because I just don't trust you, you know? But if the same person do the two things, okay? If the same person do the coding and do the operations, you are going to make sure that the code is okay because you don't want to be called in the middle of the night, okay? So one of the things that DevOps did is kind of merge the two teams in one team. Then the next thing is to get feedback. So when you get something live, the second step is the arrow back. You want to get feedback from what is live. You want to learn from that to improve your product, okay? And the last step is that you actually want to collect feedback. You don't want to wait to the very end to collect feedback. You want to collect feedback in every single step, okay? So the first step will be when I'm coding here, I run unit tests and I get feedback straight away if I broke something or not, you know? But then the next thing is I open a pull request and there's an automated build. So I get feedback again if it's working or not. Then I deploy. And when I deploy, I get feedback again if it's live or if it's not live. And then once it's live, we take a look and see if it's still running all the time, if it's down, all that kind of stuff. So the bad thing about DevOps is that it's really focused on technology, okay? And a lot of times what happens is in the companies, people develop like a technology tunnel vision. When something is wrong, they look for problems in technology or straight away. So there, for example, the company is losing customers. Why? And they start saying things like, it's because we're deploying once a month. We should deploy every 2 hours, you know? And you do that and nothing happened. You're still losing customers, okay? And why? And it's because that's not the problem. The problem is that maybe you're building the wrong products, you know? So you have to be careful to not look straight away as technology must be the problem. Sometimes it's not technology. The other thing that I hear is managers saying things like, it's because our developers are not good enough, you know? We need like these master developers. No, sometimes a graduate developer is totally fine. The problem is that you're building a product that nobody wants, you know? Or maybe your pricing is too high, or I don't know, but it doesn't need to be a technology problem straight away. And the last one is product-led growth. This is from 2016. And in a way, it's like a combination of DevOps and a combination of Lean UX, but taken to the extreme. So in DevOps, we join development, testing, and operations in one team, okay? In product-led growth, we also put in the same team the marketing and the salespeople. And the reason we do that is because a lot of times what happens is, imagine, we're losing customers. And the sales guys are under stress, no? Because they're like, we're not selling enough. So what they do is they go and talk to the customers and they make promises that nobody can achieve, okay? So they promise features that are impossible. They promise that the features will be ready in times that are impossible. They promise things so they don't lose the customers, okay? Then it goes to the development team, and the development team is delivering things very fast, so there's technical debt, things are late, and then what happens is at the end of the process, when the customer gets the final product is not good, okay? So we lose more customers, and what the sales team do? More promises, okay? So it's like a spiral where things get worse and worse and worse and worse. How do you solve that? So you put the sales team in your team and make sure that everybody understands what's going on, and you focus on one thing only. And the one thing that you focus is making sure that your product is so good that it sells itself. So it's like, for example, when I first used Spotify about 10 years ago, the second I used the app, I was like, whoa, take my money right now, okay? And I told to all my friends, I was like, have you seen this app? Like, it's amazing. And all my friends also pay for it. So Spotify don't need to spend €1 in advertising. They don't need to do that because the product is so good. So that is the whole goal of product-led growth, okay? The good thing is that you have all the teams together. And again, the bad thing is that it's like lean UX. So you run a lot of experiments, you get a lot of feedback from the users, and all that is very expensive. You need a lot of infrastructure, for example, for doing A/B testing, a lot of data analytics, all these things are expensive. They are not cheap. So that's one of the reasons companies don't do it. And so we have learned a lot, right? We know this is the first half. We have learned a lot. We have learned that planning doesn't really work, right? We have to do experiments to know if we're doing the right thing. We have learned that we need customer feedback. We have learned that teams should be one team, but somehow we still 38% success only, okay? So something is not working. And I think the problem is a Scrum, really. And the reason I think the problem is a Scrum is because it's really easy to use. So Scrum did something really well. It's teaching us a lesson, actually. The lesson is that the most important thing, whatever you are building, the most important thing is make sure that it's easy to use, okay? If you make sure that it's the most easy to use, it is extremely likely that people will use it, okay? I have heard a lot about why JavaScript is the most popular language in the world right now. And a lot of people believe that is because it's the most easy language to use. You can use JavaScript without having to install anything. Say, you want to learn JavaScript for the first time. What do I have to install? Nothing. Open your browser, run JavaScript. So it is the most easy language to get started with. That's why it's the most popular one, okay? So that's what Scrum did. Scrum was really successful, but I think now it's too late. Now it's holding us back, okay? We also use metrics that are reinforcing the wrong principles. So if we measure how many tasks you get done, or if the task was in time or not, and if I reward you for that, you are not going to care about quality. You are not going to care about making customers happy, because I'm not measuring if you make customers happy. What I'm measuring is, do you get your stuff done on time, you know? So if we measure the wrong things, we get the wrong results. Then the leaders, like the managers, CEOs, etc., are not helping because they're really focused on planning and when it's going to be done, and they're not focusing really on, our focus should be to deliver value. They're not focused on that. They're focused on, is it going to be done on time or not, you know? And there's also a lot of lack of trust from management. One example of that is now after the pandemic, many companies are saying that everybody should be back in the office, okay? In my opinion, that's a total lack of trust, okay? The reason they want you in the office is, I don't know what is the reason, but I think the reason is that they don't trust you, okay? That's the main reason. And the problem is, if I don't trust you, then you automatically kind of dislike me, okay? And you automatically are like, I'm not going to go above and beyond for you because you don't trust me. So I'm not going to work really hard for you because you don't even trust me, you know? So when I don't trust you, you basically don't choose ownership. You don't choose to say, I'm going to work really hard here. I'm going to do this on my own. And when you don't have ownership, you also don't have autonomy because you basically don't do things on your own. We also have the sales and marketing, as I say, setting us for failure. And the final problem is that we're very focused on technology. So technology is, you guys need to remember this, technology is not a goal. Like, our goal is not to write beautiful code, or our goal is to make customers happy, you know? Writing beautiful code should be something that we should try to aim for, but it's not our goal. Our goal is to make customers happy. So now that I have shared the problems with you, what is the solution, right? So I have like a proposal. The proposal is that we need a new methodology. The methodology should basically, number one, kill Scrum. Number two, it should basically take everything that we have learned, We don't need to come with something completely new, completely different. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We should also make it very easy to adopt. So we need to create a lot of documentation, a lot of training to make sure that big companies don't feel afraid from it. Then we need to make sure that trust and ownership are like principles that are core of this thing. So for example, we need to promote flexible work. We need to promote that employees make their own decisions. Ideally, in a product-led organization, what you do is, I don't tell my developers what feature I need. I don't say, I want you to be like UI that does this. I don't do that. What I say to my users is, we know that my customers are suffering pain because they need to do this task, and this task is very painful for them, very time consuming. And then I say to the developer, go and find the best solution. So I don't tell the developer what is the solution. The developer will find it. And how we'll find it, we'll run experiments, we'll do A/B testing, and that's how I will find the best solution. So we need to create a culture where I trust that my developers will find the best solution. I don't tell them what to do because I trust them, okay? And then we need to make sure that once we have this procedure in place, we need to be self-reinforced. So basically what happens is people normally when you have a set of rules, sometimes they deviate from the rules. So you need to that the process reminds them the rule on its own. One good example is standing up in the stand-up meeting. So the rule is that the meeting shouldn't be more than 10 minutes long, okay? How do you self-reinforce this rule? You say to people that they have to stand up. So they don't want to be standing up for 3 hours. So that helps to remind them that the meeting should be short, okay? Another idea is, for example, normally in Scrum, you have a backlog that is a list of tasks. So imagine if you have 2 backlogs. We have one for discovery and one for development. For something to go into development first, has to go through discovery. So if you do that in your process, you're forcing the discovery. So you're basically saying reinforcing it. Make sure that things are very specific, not open for interpretation, and prevent corruption. So to prevent my manager from coming and ask me every morning, is it ready yet? What I suggest that we do is that we completely remove estimates and planning. So we basically say delivery dates don't exist in this organization, okay? So if you say, when is it going to be ready? My answer is going to be delivery dates don't exist in this organization. So he's not going to be able to ask me that question, okay? I know this is radical. That's why it's the next point. The next point is that a lot of people tells me that sounds good, but nobody's going to do this, okay? But you are going to have to trust me on this one. It does work, okay? I have seen, I was really lucky. I was a Microsoft MVP for some time. And I saw, for example, how the guys that build TypeScript work, okay? It's an open source project. And I have seen how the open source world works. Think about Linux, for example, is the biggest project in the history of software. It's been running for like decades, and there's no managers, there's no meetings, there's no deadlines, there's no, you know, it just works. Why? Because the people that are building Linux, they have a lot of ownership, a lot of trust. They release when they think it's ready. They release only things that they know that is going to deliver value. They have high autonomy. There's very high code quality, a lot of automation. And I actually did some of this stuff myself in an open source project that I did. It's called Inversify, okay? And I really, during the time in Inversify, I felt more productive than ever before. I felt like I was in a winning team, like the NBA champions, you know? And there is like a psychological factor that I think not many people know because you don't experience it, but when you're in the winning team, the motivation like increase. It's like when you're winning, you win more, you know? So, and when you're losing, it's the other way around. When you're losing, you lose more. So we really need to make sure that as many people as possible get to experience this because everybody will be way more happy at work and stuff like that, okay? So I know some people won't believe me. That's okay. If you don't believe me, you choose the bill, okay, and go back to the way you work. And if you believe me, then we can see how can we do something about it, okay? This is the methodology. It's called the infinite loop. And basically the whole point is that we have two stages. We have the discovery stage. The goal of the discovery stage is to make sure that we're building the right product. So we're building something that people want, something that people value, okay? And then once we know that people want it and people value it, only when that's proof with data, we move to development, okay? So we should have two lists of to-do tasks. One is research needs to be done, and the other list is development needs to be done. But for something to move from the research list to the development list, first needs to pass through the discovery stages, okay? So you pass through the development stages, collect data, collect user feedback. For example, ask users, would you pay for this? And there's a lot of examples that asking that question doesn't work. You actually need to say then, okay, give me your credit card. And only when they give you the credit card, then is when you believe that they want it, okay? If they don't give you the credit card, there's no evidence there. So you actually need real data. Sometimes what companies do is they put a payment form, and when they get to the end of the payment form, it says, thank you, we are not going to charge you. We're just checking that you're actually interested in this, okay? So we will charge you when the product is ready, but it's not ready right now. So why is it called the infinite game? I actually read a book, it's called The Infinite Game. And in this book, they describe that there's two kinds of games in life. There are finite games, let's say like a football match. You want to win the football match, and you know exactly how to win the football match. You need to score more than the other team. And there are games that are infinite. So games that you don't know, the rules change all the time. You don't know what are the rules of the game. The game goes forever. So basically what happens is you have to be very careful to know what game you're playing, because if you play an infinite game, like if you are in a finite game, you're definitely going to lose, because what happens is in the finite games, you are so focused on how to win that you sacrifice everything. You sacrifice, for example, code quality. You're focused on, I want to deliver this right now to beat my competition. But if you're focused on things like that, like short-term goals, you're never going to win, because the game is never ending. You know, the game is going to keep going. So you maybe won the first round, but the rounds are infinite, you know? So you have to kind of think long-term. And if you read this book, there's a lot of difference. So you have more sense of purpose when you're working in an infinite game than when you're working in a finite game and things like that. So I like this work because I think reinforce parts of the methodology, okay? And a side note about the thumb, this is because in a second I'm going to talk about it, but the thumb is basically, if you have ever been working on something and you go so focused, you got a lot of work done, and then all of a sudden you check your watch and you're like, oh, it's so late. I didn't even notice that it was this late. And I forgot to have dinner also, you know? So if that happens to you, I don't know, have you ever experienced this? But the problem is in the office, this is very unlikely to happen, okay? In the office, people don't get in the sun. People are, why? Because there's so many distractions. The priorities are changing all the time. There is no ownership, no trust. And what happens is, to get into the sun, all those things need to happen first. And then the last thing that needs to happen is you actually need 3 or 4 hours with nobody annoying you, okay? There's a lot of science about how do you get into that fun thing, and there's preconditions. What happens is, in many businesses, those preconditions never happen. So these are the principles for the methodology. You need clear goals. It has to be data-driven. It has to be customer-centric. It has to be value-driven. When I say by being value-driven is that we don't use like burn-down charts or things like that. We use metrics that are based on value. We need to be pragmatic. That basically means that we are not so technology-focused. We need to have trust and ownership. We need to be flow friendly. So when I say flow friendly, that's the zone. So we need to create something that allows people to get into this focused zone. It needs to be product led. We have no estimates and no time boxes, and we have very explicit policies to make sure that people don't deviate from the protocol, okay? So now I want to talk about how the team should be organized. So the way the team should be organized is, this quote is really good. It's basically, when you go far, you go together. When you go fast, you want to go along. What that means is that if you want to achieve something that is very difficult, it's so difficult that you cannot do it alone, then you need a team. You need to do it together. So that something that is too difficult is like a very big goal, a faraway goal. But then if you want to do something that is, you want to do it fast and you actually can do it on your own, then you should do it on your own. So we need to create something that do the two things, okay? So what we have is, this is based on the product-led organization. So we have marketing in the team, we have engineering, architecture, UX, so everybody's in the team. The only main difference is that we don't have product owner and we don't have a scrum master, because those two people are, one person is the product manager, okay? And the idea is that all these people work together in the discovery phase, trying to discover what needs to be done, collecting data and all that. But then once they know what needs to be done, they actually go on their own. So what happens is, when they are working together, they're working towards the faraway goal. But so they're going to get far. But when they're working alone, they're completely offline, focused, getting done the work. And that's how they go fast, okay? So you kind of have to combine the two things. And the most important person in the team is the product manager. And the product manager, we can say that it's kind of like a training for being a CEO in the future. So the product manager is a person that needs to understand absolutely everything about the company. So it needs to understand the customers, the market, the competition, the developers, the UX, absolutely everything. And it's like a leader that leads the team. And his main job is to make sure that the team builds the right things. So make sure that they pick the right items, okay? And one very important thing is that when the team succeeds, it's because everybody did the right thing. But when the team fails, it's the product manager's fault, because he's the leader. He takes the ownership of that, okay? And the artifacts, so the Scrum ones are killed. So we don't have a sprint. We don't have a sprint backlog because we have a work board. We don't have product backlog because we have the tool discovery. So we have discovery backlog and DevOps backlog. We don't have product increment. The product increment is when you finish a sprint, what will be released. But they say that is optional to release. I don't think it should be optional to release, because everything we build adds value. So why not release it? So everything should be released. We continuously deliver value. We have split the work policies. We have also the product vision should be in a document. And the work in progress limits is that we cannot work on 7 tasks at the same time. Everybody should focus on one task. Then the metrics, we don't use metrics that are based on delivering on time or on date, anything like that. We focus on metrics that are based on, are we delivering value? Are the customers happy? All that kind of stuff. When we do a user story, in the user story, we need to be very careful to not say what has to be built. What you say is, what is the pain of the user? You say, as a, I don't know, sales guy, I have this problem and I would like to achieve this. So what you do is you leave the ticket open for collaboration and open for innovation, because the team needs to find the optimal solution. So you don't tell them what is the optimal solution. They will find it, and you trust that they will, okay? We're almost there, the ceremonies. So these are the meetings that happen during the process. We don't have sprints, which means that we don't have planning meeting, we don't have review meeting, and we don't have retrospective meeting. The retrospective is a good one because it's the one where you ask yourself, is there anything we can do better? So we're going to have that meeting, but we're going to have it once a month, okay? We also don't have service delivery meeting, delivery planning meeting, and risk review meetings. Those are from Kanban. We don't have them because they're also really focused on dates and all that, okay? What we do have is as many user research and testing sessions as we need. We have also a meeting in our calendar that we're going to call the Do Not Disturb meeting. And it's basically 4 hours where nobody can talk to me, okay? So everybody in the team will have 4 hours where nobody can talk to them. That's your focus time, okay? Then we're going to have the replenish meeting where basically what happens is you pick a task, the highest priority task, you pick it and you're working on it. And then the next Monday, you need to check if you need more tasks. It's like, do we need more work or are we busy or not? So if you're not busy, you say, okay, pick another task. But that's basically all you have to do, okay? And then you have a strategic review meeting to make sure that the company goals aligns with the team goals. Show and tell is if you have multiple teams, you can show, one team shows to the other what they're working on. And hackathons are for promoting the developers coming up with ideas. Because sometimes what happens is most of the ideas are going to come from the UX team or from the sales team, but you also want the developers to come with ideas. So that's why you do hackathons, okay? And this also works with the future of work. So if you think about it, if you're data driven, you're focused on collecting data and finding what customers want and all this. So that's preparing you for when AI becomes a big thing. Because for AI to work, first you need the data. So you're going to be data driving and then you will be ready for AI. And the other thing that you will be ready for is for remote work, because when I provide people with trust and I say, you will find the solution, I trust you, it really works in remote work because it's like, I don't have to be watching you and asking you constantly. I just trust that you will do it, okay? And how do you scale this? So if it works, what you do is you create multiple teams and you can split them in different ways. You can split them in features, in personas, or in journeys. So for example, when a customer is new, when the customer, you want to retain it, or different phases of the life of the customer. You can also have a meeting that is called the loops of loops. What you do is you have the product managers from every team, they meet in this meeting and they all collaborate together to do like cross-team collaboration. And finally, you can have a platform engineering team. It's basically a team that works for all the other teams. What they do is they create scripts and automation for continuous integration, continuous delivery for the infrastructure, basically. So what that means is that the teams don't have to focus so much on infrastructure because there is a team that is focused on that. And finally, what is next? So this is very early days, so I'm trying to collect feedback from as many people as I can. And then once I have more feedback, I will continue to do extensive documentation and maybe someday certifications, I don't know. But my goal is that people adopt this in companies, okay? These are some references in case you want to learn how do I come with all this stuff. Okay. So I finished very quickly and then we can talk. This is I will share the slides online, but I have like a survey about this to collect feedback. So if you can answer it, that would be great. And the last thing, as I say, I'm organizing the conference in September. So if you guys are interested in JavaScript, please check out the conference. It's here in Dublin on 26th of September. And the very last thing is that I am available for helping teams with this kind of stuff. So if you're interested, your team or whatever, please contact me. And that's it. Thank you.